Coming up on this Monday edition of Newsline at noon, the presidential office tries to ease public anxiety about the government's new pension plan. But the discord enters a new phase as the welfare minister insists he will step down whether President Park wants him to or not. The National Assembly is set to hold a plenary session after a month of suspension, but issues like the latest welfare controversy and reforming the spy agency continue to divide the ruling and opposition parties. Plus, the clock is ticking towards a possible federal government shutdown in the US this week as the Republican-strong House and the Democrat-led Senate wrangle over President Obama's controversial healthcare reforms. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi You-sun in Seoul.
Fantastic to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the latest turbulence surrounding the government's new pension plan. President Park Geun-hye has reaffirmed her stance in pushing ahead with the basic pension program unveiled last week, and she's called on her senior government officials to do their best in keeping their promises to the public.
Her remarks come after the nation's welfare minister insisted on stepping down over the weekend. Our presidential correspondent Oh Jin-ju reports.
President Park has urged her government, cabinet members, and senior secretaries to take full responsibility and have the sense of duty in pushing ahead with state affairs. Her comments are thought to be aimed at Health and Welfare Minister Jin Young, who once again made it clear that he will not return to work despite President Park's decision to turn down his resignation last week. Jin offered to step down on Friday, taking responsibility for not being able to fulfill President Park's key welfare pledge on basic pension. On Sunday, Jin told reporters that he had opposed and is still against the idea of linking the new basic pension program with the national pension and had expressed his views to the presidential office of Cheongwade a number of times. Under the new basic pension plan unveiled last week, only the lower 70% income bracket of senior citizens aged 65 and above will receive up to 200,000 won, or about $186, falling short of President Park's original pledge to provide the maximum $186 to all Koreans in this age group. However, even for those in the bottom 70%, 10% of them will receive as little as $93 in accordance with how long they have contributed to the national pension system. Jin stressed that his resignation is a matter of conscience, as it wouldn't be possible to persuade the public nor the National Assembly as a minister if he himself doesn't agree with the new plan. Jin's decision is causing quite a stir, as critics say it shows President Park can't control one of her closest aides and struggles to resolve differences on key policies with related ministries. It could also make the public question the government's pension program altogether, with Jin, who is in charge of drawing up President Park's welfare pledges and other policy goals, has clearly expressed his opposition to the new system. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Lawmakers here in Korea are getting back to work today, ending a month-long period of inactivity due to a political tug-of-war over a number of issues. The parliament will hold the first plenary meeting of the regular session under the Park Geun-hye administration, but the divisions between the ruling and opposition parties run deep. Our Hwang Sang-hee has the details.
The ruling Saenuri and the main opposition Democratic parties are set to hold their first plenary session of the National Assembly on Monday in an attempt to normalize operations at the parliament that have been disrupted by a string of contentious issues. The lawmakers are way behind schedule as the current session opened at the start of September for a 100-day run. Starting Tuesday, lawmakers will hold emergency hearings over why the Park Geun-hye administration scaled back its pension program for senior citizens, as well as the resignation of the nation's top prosecutor over allegations of having a child out of wedlock. From October 14th to November 2nd, the National Assembly will carry out an audit of government offices. On November 11th, a full assembly session will be convened to listen in on the president's administrative speech on their budget plan for next year. From November 12th, lawmakers will have a 5-day interpellation session to question the government on a wide range of issues. Although the lawmakers have returned to work, the two parties remain wide apart on a number of key issues, like the scaled-back pension plan for senior citizens. The pension program was one of President Park's key campaign pledges, which called for giving a monthly allowance to all senior citizens aged 65 and above. However, the plan was revised in next year's budget proposal, excluding the wealthiest 30% of senior citizens. The opposition party accuses the president of making a false campaign promise, but the ruling party insists the move was inevitable due to a tight budget and that they have already apologized for the change in plan. 황성희, Arirang News.
Top military officials from Korea and the U.S. are holding the 38th Bilateral Military Committee meeting as we speak, with a wide range of pending regional issues on the table.
Tomorrow marks the 60th year since Korea and the United States signed the Mutual Defense Treaty. It's very meaningful to hold the military committee meeting at a time like this.
Korea's chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Chung Seung-jo, and his visiting counterpart, U.S. Army General Martin Dempsey, are expected to discuss ways to enhance the Korea-U.S. military alliance and strengthen their combined defense strategies. The meeting comes ahead of the two allies' annual security consultative meeting Wednesday, where a possible delay of wartime operational control transfer from Washington to Seoul will likely be discussed. The Secretariat for the two Koreas Joint Committee for their Kaesong Industrial Complex opened its doors on this Monday. The permanent body, which will be stationed at the North Korean border town, is staffed by both South Korean and North Korean personnel and will serve as a communication channel for the management of their joint business park. Officials held their first meeting this morning to exchange ideas on how the Secretariat should be run. This comes amid dampened inter-Korean relations following Pyongyang's sudden postponement of planned reunions for families separated since the Korean War.
Korea's industrial output grew at its fastest pace in 9 months in August, raising hopes for improved economic conditions. Manufacturers' business confidence also went up for the second straight month in September. Hwang Ji-ae has the details.
Recent figures indicate that the Korean economy may be on the path to recovery. Statistics Korea said Monday that the nation's industrial output expanded in August from a month earlier, growing at the fastest pace in 9 months. Industrial output, which includes production in the mining, manufacturing, and gas industries, rose 1.8% last month, following a 0.3% fall in July. This indicates that local manufacturers were backed by firm exports during the period, since Korea acts as the production base for some of the world's largest manufacturers of automobiles, ships, and smartphones. Exports in August, in fact, grew over 7% from the previous year, the strongest showing in 7 months. Production in service sector also grew 0.7% in August from a month earlier, after a 0.4% drop in July. And it's not just the latest output data that have raised expectations of improved economic conditions. The Bank of Korea said Monday that Korean manufacturers' business confidence this month posted a 3-month high of 75, up from the 73 tallied in August. The upward trend is a good sign, but a reading below 100 still means that local manufacturers feel more pessimistic about the economy. The central bank said that local automakers and shipbuilders especially gave optimistic views about their business operations. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
The Korean government plans to funnel millions of dollars into small and medium-sized companies to stimulate the sluggish labour market. It wants to create more jobs by encouraging SMEs to open up more part-time positions. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Korea's Ministry of Employment and Labor unveiled its plans Sunday to create 37,000 new jobs in small and medium-sized companies with fewer than 300 employees. The move comes after the ministry secured over 11.8 trillion won, or roughly $11 billion in budget for 2014, an increase of nearly 8% from this year. In a drive to create new jobs within SMEs with flexible working hours, the government will fund the social insurance fee, which the business owners are required to pay for 2 years, while also increasing labor cost support per employee. The ministry will set aside $9.3 million from the budget for the social insurance fee and increase labor cost support to about $21.5 million from the current $9.8 million. The ministry added that companies that cut back on long working hours and create new jobs will also be able to receive up to $185,000 in capital investment and support in labor costs. The Labor Ministry also plans to expand support to prevent women cutting their career short. Companies will receive increased financial support when employing substitute workers to replace those in maternity leave, while some $650 million will be set aside for maternity leave and other childcare-related allowances. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has been named the world's second most innovative company in the world, knocking Google from its number 2 spot, but failing to dislodge Apple. The Boston Consulting Group's annual report on the world's 50 most innovative companies put the Korean tech giant in second place this year, marking a rapid rise from its 26th place in 2008. Google slipped a notch to third after holding on to the number 2 spot for 7 consecutive years. Apple has retained its top spot for the 9th year in a row, while Samsung's main domestic rival LG came in at 25th. The US-based consulting company says the technology and telecommunications industries continue to take the lead on innovation this year, with 4 of the top 5 places on the list. Now, the mercury is starting to fall across Korea as the country transitions into autumn. But many retail chains here, from major department stores to local supermarkets, are already in full-on winter mode. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
Koreans across the nation are pulling their fall coats out of the closet as temperatures continue to drop and winter conditions pick up following the hot summer season. However, when looking at local retailers here in Seoul, it seems like autumn has already come and gone. Convenience stores have begun selling jimbang, or hot steamy buns filled with red bean paste, which is a tasty treat usually reserved for the cold winters in Korea.
Oh, I see that the steamed buns have come out. I guess summer is over now. It seems like winter's coming now that autumn's here. Better keep an eye out for the snow.
The trend has also been hitting appliance stores nationwide, as electric stoves and heaters have taken over market shelves.
A couple days ago, we and other similar branches started to pull our summer products from our displays for winter products. Since the weather is beginning to cool down, we expect that there will be a greater demand for winter products.
The nation's largest department store chains have opted to skip ahead and unveil their winter fashion lines. The early sales of thick jackets and parkas is a strategic move by retail outlets ahead of what is likely to be another long and icy winter season.
Since it was a little colder last year, it seems like consumers will tend to make their winter purchases a bit earlier this year.
Meteorologists forecast that winter-like temperatures will also come earlier this year, and stores are betting that their early bird marketing campaigns will pay off. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Choi You-sun and Mark Broome every weekday at lunchtime. NEWSLINE at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
The U.S. government may face its first partial shutdown in 17 years if lawmakers, deeply divided over President Obama's health care law, fail to reach an agreement on an emergency budget plan before Monday midnight. Our Park Ji-won has more.
The Republican-controlled House of Representatives passed a temporary budget plan early Sunday that includes a one-year delay of President Obama's health care reform, more commonly known as Obamacare.
Let's postpone it for a year. That's what this vote is all about. Will you accept the compromise? If this government shuts down, it's because you have not accepted the compromise that Republicans have reached out to you and offered.
A shutdown is not a tactic. It's not a strategy. It is a failure for this country. Let us not be the country whose representatives cannot work together to fulfill the most basic function of government.
If lawmakers fail to reach a deal before Monday midnight, when the current fiscal year expires, a partial government shutdown would be unavoidable, with some 800,000 workers in non-essential government offices put on unpaid leave. The Democrat-controlled Senate will most likely reject the budget bill that delays President Obama's signature health care law. The White House also said the president would veto the legislation if the House bill managed to pass the Senate. As a shutdown is less and less likely to be avoided before its deadline, uncertainty is rising on markets. Although U.S. markets have managed to get by during previous partial government shutdowns without any major catastrophes, experts warn that if the shutdown is drawn out, the potentially negative impacts could be huge. Meanwhile, experts say no matter how long the potential shutdown continues, it won't affect the timing at which the U.S. government will reach its debt limit. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew has said earlier that the U.S. will reach its debt ceiling on October 17th. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The UN Security Council is figuring out a way to boost aid into war-stricken Syria, which has been slow to trickle into the country due to excessive red tape and violence. UN officials say deputy envoys on the Security Council will meet on Monday to discuss a presidential statement that would seek to boost aid by urging Syrian authorities to allow cross-border deliveries and asking the government and the rebels to hold humanitarian pauses in the fighting. The 2.5-year uprising against President Bashar al-Assad's rule has killed more than 100,000 people and driven more than 2 million Syrians out of the country. Italian Prime Minister Enrico Letta will go to Parliament this week to try and find a way out of the crisis engulfing his coalition government. Officials say a confidence vote will be held on Wednesday. Relations between Letta's center-left grouping and former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi's center-right party have reached rock bottom after Berlusconi pulled his 5 ministers out of the administration and called for new elections. Infighting within the coalition government has stalled much-needed economic reforms, and the current turmoil will likely delay those reforms even further. Up to 50 students have been killed in a suspected Islamist gunmen attack at a college in northeast Nigeria. Officials say the students, mostly young men, were shot dead as they slept in their dormitory at the College of Agriculture in Yobe State. The northeastern part of Nigeria has been under a state of emergency for over 5 months due to an Islamist insurgency by the Boko Haram group. Boko Haram, formed in 2002 and originally focused on opposing Western education, wants to overthrow Nigeria's government to create an Islamic state.
A pilot free trade zone has opened in Shanghai in the latest step by the Chinese government to attract more foreign investment and to test the country's adaptation to a liberal market economy. In the zone, covering some 30 square kilometers, registered and foreign and private companies are allowed to invest in 18 service industry sectors, including finance, law and culture. 25 companies were given the first batch of licenses to be active in the test zone. China's State Council announced in July its plan to operate the test-free trade zone in Shanghai, which is China's commercial hub with a population of 20 million. A group of Korean researchers has developed a technology to produce gasoline using metabolically engineered microbes. Korea's Science Ministry said Monday that a team from KAIST, the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, has, through metabolic engineering, developed a kind of bacteria that excretes gasoline after consuming glucose. Using this technology, the team was able to produce 580 milligrams of gasoline from 1 litre of solution containing metabolically engineered microbes. Scientists in the US were the first to produce fuel with microbes, but their results were not as close to the gasoline the KAIST team produced. The research findings were published on Monday in the online edition of the international science journal Nature. Korea and Britain have been actively cooperating on bilateral healthcare development with a joint research hospital program launched earlier this year. The two countries hope to continue strengthening that cooperation ahead of President Park Geun-hye's state visit to Britain in November. Paulie reports.
Here at the London Health Forum just outside of Seoul earlier this month, Dr. Robert Winter from Cambridge University discussed new ways for healthcare organizations to work together. Dr. Winter is one of the many speakers who believe that the future of medicine in the UK and Korea lies in research-driven hospitals.
Evidence is available about effect, the widespread adoption and spread within a health system.
In Britain, major universities, the National Health Service, and other public health agencies have established strategic partnerships with hospitals. This relationship directly connects medical research with healthcare. Top British university officials say it's a natural link between institutions and the community.
We can't do everything all in one place. And so taking one community and saying, actually, I can now transfer this onto the next community. Actually, it's about building trust.
This past March, 10 research-driven hospitals were launched across Korea. In the wake of this forum, local health authorities here are in full support of future collaborative policies between the two countries.
If there is a certain area of cooperation, then there will be administrative support. If needed, the Korean government plans to provide R&D funding through financial support.
President Park Geun-hye is scheduled to make a state visit to Britain in early November, where she is expected to further expand bilateral cooperation in the health industry. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Now in sports, Kenyan Wilson Kipsang has smashed the marathon world record by 15 seconds as he claimed the Berlin title on Sunday. The 31-year-old finished the near 42.2-kilometer run in 2 hours, 3 minutes and 23 seconds, beating the previous mark set by compatriot Patrick Macau 2 years ago, and he also did that in the German capital. Macau pulled out of this year's race 2 weeks ago because of a knee injury. Last year, Kipsang won the London Marathon and claimed a bronze medal at the 2012 London Olympics.
Let's now check on the weather on this final day of September with our Lee Ji-hyun standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon to you, Ji-hyun.
Well, good afternoon, guys. Well, I don't know if you have noticed, but the Korean Peninsula was typhoon-free this year.
Yes, but, you know, we did have a few typhoons coming, didn't we? But they hit Japan and China instead. And I was wondering whether this is something to do with this really hot summer we've just had.
That's a very good guess, Mark. The KMA reported that the blistering heat that lingered till middle of this month kind of blocked the path of the typhoon. So I guess we should appreciate the steamy weather we had this summer. But the weather this morning made it feel like a typhoon was on the way. It was dark and gray with a drizzle in most regions, but it's letting up right now, and we'll have some afternoon sun with a mix of clouds, but the sky will stay cloudy with a few leftover showers in the east coast. Well, as we can see, the clouds are moving to the east coast, so that's giving way to a little bit of sunshine that's been hiding behind the clouds, so we can look forward to a much brighter afternoon. Well, tomorrow looks to be mostly to partly sunny with a low in the mid to upper teens, and we expect afternoon highs in the mid-20s for most regions. Now, Tuesday should be the warmest day of this week because we have another rain in the forecast on Wednesday, which will add the chill to the air for the remainder of the week. With that, let's take a look at readings for today. Now, the morning lows in Seoul started out at 16, and it's rising to 24 degrees Celsius, which is 75 degrees in Fahrenheit. And the afternoon highs in Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will be in the mid-20s. Now, let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju and Daejeon will have similar afternoon highs, while chilly weather is on tap for Mountain Gyeonggang. Now, that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world.
Okay, thank you to Jiyeon there for the weather, and those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us again tomorrow right here on NEWSLINE at noon.